and I truly have the honor of being your host this evening. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in to this virtual format, which allows us to continue to bring these amazing authors and their important books, words and worlds, to readers like you. And it is no exception with our guests this evening. I am so excited to welcome our very special guest, Lyla Lee, along with Amélie Zhao, as we celebrate the release of Lyla's much anticipated newest novel, Flip the Script. Yes, you can see all my notes. Loved it so much. What better way to honor the end of ANHPI Heritage Month and the beginning of Pride with a celebration of this amazing new novel. But before we begin, just a few notes. If you'd like to have a closed captioning for this event, please look at the bottom of your screen and click on live transcripts and select show subtitle. You can also click the link in the chat to purchase copies of Lyla's new book, Flip the Script, if you haven't, or grab a copy for a friend. And also, thanks to Lyla's awesome pre-order campaign, all books purchased with this event through this evening will be eligible for exclusive swag, including a signed book plate, beautiful art cards, and more. You just have to fill out that form that will drop again in the chat box as well, or it can also be found on Lyla's website. You can also check out Amélie's epic Blood Air series, especially the newest installment, Crimson Rain, which you can also grab in that chat box if you haven't already, of course. Also, if you have a question this evening, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of our chat, guests will have time to answer some of your questions. And you can also vote on those questions you really want answered by clicking the thumbs up button. As always, please remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that friends be respectful of one another in their questions and comments. And now, on to the event you're all waiting for. It is truly my honor to welcome back to our virtual stage fabulous YA and chapter book author and educator, Lyla Lee. Lyla is the author of the YA novel I'll Be the One of my faves, this one right here, and the Mindy Kim chapter book series, including this new one right here. Yeah. Born in South Korea, Lyla has since lived in various cities throughout the US, from California to Florida to her current home in Texas. Lyla has loved writing since 4th grade and even finished her first novel at 14. After working various jobs in Hollywood and studying psychology and cinematic arts at the University of Southern California, Lyla now fills her days writing, teaching kids, and petting cute dogs. Those are such great things. And tonight we are celebrating the release of Lyla's much anticipated new novel, Flip the Script. With this newest book, Lyla brings readers all the feels as she dives into the emotional world of K-dramas. From fake dating, frenemies to lovers, and so much delicious food and sights along the way, the novel is a beautiful and delightful sapphic romance and love letter to soul. Hana's story and that of her fellow co-stars are an important and hopeful exploration and celebration of queer and cultural identity, while following your passion and your heart along the way. So I hope you pause that episode of Crash Landing or Business Proposal and read Flip the Script. But before, of course, enjoy this discussion. So of course, tonight, Lyla is joined by fellow YA author, Amélie Zhao. Amélie is the author of the epic and thought-provoking Blood Air series, which started with this beautiful novel right here, as well as the upcoming novel, Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, which is the first in a much anticipated new series. So excited to pre-order that one. Born in Paris and raised in a multicultural community in Beijing, Amélie has always had a deep love for traveling, exploring new sites and cultures. And currently, Amélie lives in New York City, working as a financial professional by day and a writer by night. What a great thing to do in the evening, because I can't wait to read her next book. So enough of all that. Now on to the event you're all waiting for. It is my pleasure to pass the discussion on to Lyla Amélie. The virtual stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Leah. And hi, guys. We are so excited to be here to celebrate the, birth of Lyla's new beautiful book. I freaking love this. Like Lyla, when you sent me that advanced copy, I think I told you I read it in one sitting.
Aww.
And it was a roller coaster of emotions. And I teared up a little at the end, which I don't know if some people here might know me, but I never ever cry during.
Oh my gosh. I'm so honored.
So it was so beautiful. It's Flip the Script is literally such a combination of so many things that I love, from like the meet cute trope to girl power, girlfriend power, K-drama and K-pop culture, and then down to details like Hana's parents' Korean superstitions, and then how they use Kakao Talk, which is like the WhatsApp in Korea. So tell us a little about your inspirations behind Flip the Script and how this story came about.
Yeah, thanks for a great introduction, Amélie. I'm so flattered and honored that I made you cry. But anyway, so with the script, I think how I came to write for the script is kind of two parts, because I feel like the first part was definitely my lifelong experience of being Korean, being born in Korea, and also traveling to Korea even when I didn't live in Korea itself. So a lot of the experiences I had with my many trips in Korea went into the book. For example, in the book, there's a scene where Hana and Minji rent hanbok, which is like Korean traditional clothing, and walk around the Bukchon Hanok village in Seoul near the royal palace. And that's an actual thing that I did in one of my main trips into Korea. So I feel like a lot of the script was organic in that like it came from my personal experiences, but also like I really love K-dramas, and K-dramas are basically what they were like when I was growing up in America, like there are a lot of TV shows and movies, especially in the 2000s to 2010s, where the Asian representation wasn't that great, if at all existent. So the K-dramas were basically where I saw myself in, and they were the media forms of media where I actually didn't feel like an other. So I grew up watching K-dramas for my entire life, and while writing for the script, I actually watched a lot of K-dramas about making K-dramas, because I wanted to write like a fictional story, but that felt still realistic enough to and more true to the world. And I figured that because I feel like in the end of the day, I think I struggled a lot with like writing for the script, because I always thought that like I wasn't Korean enough, or like I didn't have any ties to the K-drama industry. Like for I'll Be the One, my debut, I was lucky enough to have a friend in the K-pop industry, so I got to like kind of pick his brain a little bit to see what it was like. But for the script, I didn't know anyone in the industry, so it was kind of hard. But I think the way I overcame that is I realized that I could, at the end of the day, my book is like a fictional story about K-dramas and making K-dramas. So it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. And I figured, who better can understand K-dramas and how they're made than other K-dramas about K-dramas. So I watched a lot of shows like The Greatest Love, and which is a pretty old drama, and like Record of Youth, which is a very recent drama that I don't recommend because it's very homophobic. But in industry wise, it's like pretty knowledgeable. So I feel like I watched a lot of those to get over that imposter syndrome.
I love that. And I really identify with like how you felt like with the two worlds, kind of like after coming to the US for college. I luckily grew up in Beijing in China, so I got to see, I grew up with Chinese TV shows, but also coming here, I felt like there was a clear boundary line between the Western media that I was watching and then just my Chinese bubble. And it felt like we weren't really seen in this Western side of the world. So just seeing books like yours and all the representation that has been, rightfully coming in the past few years just brings me so much joy. And I feel like as Diaspora, there's always a lot of research that we have to put into writing, even if it's our own heritage. And Flip the Script just felt so real. Like I feel like I was eating. I think there was a scene where they were eating tteokbokki. I don't know if I said that. The rice cakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from details of Hana's diaspora life, growing up between the U.S. and Korea, down to like food and tteokbokki in Seoul. So I know you've lived in Korea for a number of years, but any writing requires a lot of research. So what kind of research did you do for Flip the Script, and how do you approach research in general?
Yeah, good question. So I kind of touched on it before, but I did like research through watching a lot of K-dramas, specifically K-dramas about making K-dramas, because I wanted to see how the industry perceives itself, and how like they like portray the process of making K-dramas. But also I did a lot of like, I'm like what I like to call like a, you know how there's like a method acting? I'm like a method author where like a lot of my books like I are based on personal experiences. Like for example,
like eating a lot of rice cakes.
Yeah.
in Korea.
Yeah, like eating a lot of good food, basically, a lot of street food. But also like for example, for I'll Be the One was like kind of made from years of me like learning how to dance, teaching myself how to dance through like K-pop videos and following along to BTS. And also I had this other book that didn't published, unfortunately, but that was about like a rock band, and I taught myself guitar. And for the script, I actually flew to Korea in 2020 in the peak COVID era, and just like quarantine for 2 weeks, and then stayed there for 2 more weeks to go around Seoul and the rest of the country to kind of get a sense of what it's really like to live in Korea. Because even though I did live in Korea, it wasn't like recently. I lived there when I was like a kid, so I don't know what it's like to be living in Korea in the 2020s. So I really wanted to immerse myself in the world of like Korea and like really try out the food, but also like just to take in the sights and sounds of like, you know, what it's like to live in the crowded apartment in the middle of the city, or what it's like to like walk around like the royal palace in Korea, or like other like spots that are in the city. So I feel like I did a lot of that stuff because I really wanted to make the book more grounded.
Yeah, and I think it absolutely shows. Like I felt like I was sucked into the world, like and into like the filming room with Hana. But so let's talk about K-pop and K-dramas, which you explore so much in the book and which I loved so much. They've become such a phenomenon internationally, and rightfully so. So I think you really peeled back this industry to give us a more behind the scenes look into how it functions. So for example, learning from your book that Korea does live shooting of K-dramas after each episode was mind-blowing for me. But you also really explored the reality of some aspects like fan culture, the treatment of female and queer idols, which I would love to hear from you about. So what themes does Flip the Script hope to explore here?
Yeah, so I think that I want to explore two main themes. One is quite frankly like smash the patriarchy, because I think it's something I definitely noticed through my research, because I feel like as much as I researched about K-dramas, I also researched a lot about fame, and specifically what fame does to young people. Like I researched a lot about Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish and other like K-pop stars who like are female and started off way young as teenagers. And I kind of really studied like how like celebrity culture like treats them, and how they kind of overcome those like challenges of like of being in like a very male dominated industry where for example just Justin Bieber, like he's like also a celebrity who like started off young, and he's definitely made a lot of mistakes, but you don't see people going after Justin Bieber the way they go after like Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish if they just say one wrong thing. So I feel like the industry and I mean Hollywood is too, but also a lot more in Korea is very patriarchal in nature. So I really want to explore a story about two girls who kind of stand up against that, and remain true to themselves in the process. So let's see what's the first theme I want to explore. The second theme I want to explore is kind of like the well, the book place I signed for the script, it says never be afraid to be yourself, because I feel like for me, at growing up queer and Asian, I always felt in the queer space that I couldn't be Asian, like and that's more because like I grew up like in a very traditional household where I was told like being queer is like a white person thing, and also it was kind of like also kind of like I'm trying to find a word. It was like kind of stressed in the queer circle too, because like, queerness, especially in America, is very white. And also like I watch and you won't see that many Asian faces in the queer world, for example. And if they are, they're not portrayed in a good way. For example, I remember when I was watching RuPaul's Drag Race in my early 20s, like I was very shocked in how the Asian drag queens were treated or portrayed compared to other drag queens. So that plus the fact that like even in the Asian space, like queerness is not really seen as welcome. So I think I struggled a lot personally, feeling like I was an other, or like feeling like I didn't belong. So I really want to write a book about like two queer girls, three queer teens, because they're all queer, who stay true to themselves and like really go for their passions, and also like love the people they want to love, because like that's something that I really wanted people to do. Like I want this book to be there for other queer teens with similar experiences, and I want this book to inspire them to be to not be afraid to be themselves.
I love that. And I think that you're absolutely right. There are so many more barriers for, I guess, women in I guess fame in Hollywood and K-pop, those industries, as well, obviously for queer idols, and especially in Asia, where it's, you know, not very talked about, and it's just not part of, and talking about things isn't part of the culture, I feel. I mean, in China for me.
Right.
So I really think this book is going to save lives. I think it's going to change lives. Like yeah, it's just so emotional. But yeah, there's so much, like I'll see news of like Billie Eilish, for example, people talking about what she's wearing and like her body under
Her weight,
or a hoodie.
like, who
because she
cares?
yeah, and no one ever says that about like
Yeah,
male
it's
idols.
worse for K-pop stars. Like literally, like
Yeah.
people, I see all K-pop headlines and like about like controversies for like the smallest thing. Like, oh, she didn't say hi to the reporters, so she's rude. Or like, oh, she like didn't wave back, so she's rude. It's like people are allowed to like do whatever they want. Like, and that's something that like very much exists in like celebrity culture, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen like, I think I watched a documentary of like Blackpink, and they're like, oh, we literally had to weigh ourselves every single morning, every single evening, and like they're not allowed to eat and things like that. And there's just really a double standard. So I super appreciate, you know, all the girl power and all the queer power in this book. So thank you for writing it. And then segueing into identity. And I think a lot of what I connected with immediately in this book, in the first introduction of Hana and the characters around her, was identity and diaspora. A lot of it really hit home for me because I myself am a Chinese diaspora. Hana, for example, only moved to Korea a few years prior to the book, right? And so many times she states she feels like a fish out of water, neither fully Korean nor fully American Korean. And she says things like, I'm only as Korean as a sweet potato stuffed crust pizza, but they're still Korean Pizza Hut, like they're still fundamentally an American thing. I also remember her getting into trouble at one point because a line of her Korean sounded awkward, which is, you know, people who live in Asia can really judge people, the diaspora community, for things like this. So how does Hana's identity as a Korean diaspora reflect your own experiences? And conversely, how did you draw on your own experiences to write just such an authentic character and story?
I think for Hana, like I feel like I was born in Korea, and I've been to Korea in that like I can fluently speak Korean, but even then I still feel like I don't belong. And I think that's actually part of the reasons why I took so long to like write a book set in Korea, because even though I don't have imposter syndrome regarding my writing, I have imposter syndrome in like being Korean. And I kind of touched on that like experience in Hana's book, but made it worse because I figured that if someone is born and raised mostly in America, they'll feel even more like they don't belong. And I actually turned to like other like Korean American celebrities that I know that like grew up here and went to Korea for work. Like for example, Jessie, she was born and raised, I think, in New Jersey. And she like is really big in the industry, and people like make fun of her all the time for like being bad at Korean and they're like being too sexy. And I think I drew from not only my experiences but also like other Korean American celebrities I saw in the media. Yeah. How about you, Amélie? How did you draw on your own experience with Chinese diaspora to write your books?
Um, I think with, I guess for the Blood Air trilogy, it was kind of me reconciling kind of my place in the world. I had just moved from China to the US, and I honestly thought like books with Asian or Chinese characters just couldn't get published because I just didn't see them on the shelves throughout college. So it was kind of me trying to write this other world, but then sneaking in elements of myself. So I say this a lot, but one of my favorite characters in the Blood Air trilogy is an East Asian assassin called Lin. And she literally shows up in one of the last chapters of the book. I kind of just snuck her in. And then I was like, she's literally me. Like she's not obnoxiously loud or sassy or sarcastic like all the like iconic characters we used to read about in college, but she's like iconic in her own right with all the characteristics that haven't I haven't seen on bookshelves. So she really blooms into her role throughout the Blood Air trilogy, and she becomes one of the three POV characters. And she actually she was trafficked from her homeland in the eastern part, parallel to East Asia, to the Cyrillian Empire in it. And her reconciling, where's home for me? Where's my place in the world? Was really me kind of tackling the same thoughts. So, yeah. But yeah, I
Talk
love
about your
that we
fantasy
like
books.
resonate so
You can
much.
talk about your Chinese fantasy books too, or
Yeah, I think that is okay. So that was me. I feel like every book is like a step of our soul and our development. That was me coming back home. I was like, okay, like I know that, I'm broken into the industry. I think that I can write a book that's Chinese and steeped in all our culture and mythology with full Chinese cast. And I think it's going to work. So that was kind of me going back and doing research on my own culture, and making sure I have, the historical references, all the language, etc. right? Even though I literally grew up there and became an adult there. So yeah, it was an interesting process moving from the Blood Air trilogy as my debut into this second series. Yeah. But yeah, I think like as a Chinese author writing these stories, even about my own heritage and home country, I just feel like they're really part of my heart and soul. But also at the same time, I feel the burden to really strive for perfection and ensure that my home culture is portrayed accurately, just because there aren't that many Chinese fantasy stories out there yet. So wondering if you feel this kind of simultaneous pride and pressure when you write stories from your own home culture or home identity.
yeah, I feel like I definitely did more in the past, especially when in the 2010s when I was still writing books, not published yet, but writing books. There weren't that many like Asian books or Asian American books or like Korean American books. But recently, like we've had such great like Korean American books like by Axio, like Kat Cho, like Junher's Chinese, Junher's Canadian. But just like that, a lot of Korean diaspora authors who are like making these like great books that I feel less alone, and I feel like I feel less of a pressure than I used to. So I feel like I feel less of a pressure, but I'm also like I think like I feel more pressure in like the queer Asian space, because even though there's a lot of good like Asian American or Asian Canadian books, there aren't that many like queer Asian books, period, that are out there in America at least. And I think I do definitely feel that pressure, but the way I kind of get over that is I try to offer a broad spectrum of the queer Asian experience. For example, even though I'm like a bi person myself, I always try to create a varied experience of being bi. Like for example, in I'll Be the One, Sky is bi and she's dating a bi boy, and so I mean the thing about being bi is that people are like, you have to choose, and it's like, well, we don't have to choose. Like bi people like can like women, men, non-binary people. So I feel like I wanted to present the experience of what it's like to be a bi person who likes the opposite gender. Or in the flip the script, I have Hana, who's a girl who likes another girl, and there's sapphic So, and I also have like Henry, I have Bryan, who's pansexual. So I definitely wanted to provide a broad spectrum of experiences, because like queerness is not like a monolith, just like being Asian is not a monolith.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally feel you. Like writing even your home heritage, like even as someone who literally is Chinese and grew up in China, I'm just like, I feel a lot of pride, but also pressure, because some people will take a single book and really nitpick and look at it as the sole, like the sole, path to like understanding that representation. And that honestly shouldn't be the case. It's not the case with white authors, and it shouldn't be the case with, authors of color. Like, I'm Chinese, but I'm not a history major, for example. There are details
Right.
of my own history that I have to go and research too. And there might be details that, I either made fictional, or I don't know, there could be like a small mistake here or there in the grand scheme of Chinese history, which is a lot. So writing these books, I always, especially in today's environment, I feel like I'm treading on eggshells a little, and I feel like I just have to justify every decision that I make, even
Mhm.
though Song of Silver, Flame Like Night is set in a fictional world, and we are writing fiction. So it's interesting how there's like a double-edged sword for representation as authors of color, and as for you, a queer author of color, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, that's actually a great seg into our next section, which is representation writing East Asian stories. So I would love to talk about influences. The publishing industry is going through so much change, and we're seeing underrepresented and marginalized voices starting to get the recognition that they deserve. Representation is so important. So, for example, Flip the Script is such an amazing exploration of the multitudes of sub-identities that make up the Asian American, Asian diaspora, queer Asian identity. So, what are some books or K-dramas or shows that you loved growing up, that influenced Flip the Script and your other works?
That's a good question. I think for books, I can't really say there are any books that influenced me while I was growing up, because I just didn't have books like Flip the Script growing up. Recently though, like I was very inspired and influenced by other Korean American authors who are producing similar stories, and just that gave me a lot of bravery I needed to write my own books. Um, in terms of K-dramas, I think are K-dramas are what more strongly drew influence on for the script. Um, in particular, I grew up with like historical dramas like Queen's Handok, Ishan, like those like really long epic Korean fantasy slash historical dramas that go on for 80 episodes. So that's why like in the book, the show that Hana and Minji and Bryan are in, it's like this like mix of contemporary slash historical drama. And also I more recently, as like an adult, I was heavily influenced by Goblin, which is my favorite K-drama of all time,
I still
because
haven't finished it.
what happened? Why did you finish it? We need to like exit this chat right now so you can finish it.
Kicked off.
Anyway, I'll ignore that. So Goblin is my favorite show of all time. Because even though it has some questionable like age difference thing going on, I think as a show, it really like push the boundaries of what it means to be a contemporary show or a historical show, because it does all three. It's like a fantasy drama that's historical and contemporary, and has a lot of humor, but it also gets kind of dark. So I think I really admired like the complexity of that show, and which is why like whatchamacallit, Fate of Destiny, the show where Hana, Minji, and Bryan star, and it's kind of like a similar kind of show. But also like I love a lot of rom-coms. My most recent favorites are Beloved Summer, and Business Proposal, which you're watching. And like I feel like I definitely want to capture the kind of like slapstick humor slash rom-com like cute vibe of contemporary K-dramas and put it into this book. Yeah.
K-dramas are so good at like it's not, I don't know if it's slapstick humor, but it just works so well. I don't know how it's done. I'm just like, it's just always hilarious. Even though you call it, I don't know if it's slapstick, but yeah, I love it. Yeah. But yeah, I think like for me with the Blood Air trilogy, it was very much me looking at the industry and thinking like, okay, what is YA fantasy kind of, and then like subtly adding in my own influences. So with like the themes it explores, and for example with Lin, like I just spoke about, I think Blood Air is really that. But I think Song of Silver Flame Like Night is like me like taking another step into the industry and coming into myself and saying, okay, like take a breath. I am going to write a Chinese book. So I grew up with Romance of the Three Kingdoms, oh my gosh, 射雕英雄传, Legend of the Condor Hero.
I read too, yeah, because the English title is
thing.
different.
Yeah, and a lot of like 武侠, what we call 武侠仙侠,
Yeah.
so Chinese fantasy shows. And Song of Silver, Flame Like Night is all of that. And
So
it's me
excited.
taking it into the American fantasy industry. So I'm super excited about that. It's written the style, a lot of the linguistic choices of the characters, the culture is super, super Chinese. Like for example, there's a custom in Song where to go up to the school where the magic Chinese boarding school, they have to go up 999 steps every single time up the mountain. And a lot of my I guess non-Chinese readers don't understand it, but it's such a common trope in Chinese fiction where you have to earn your passage into the school or the temple, and you have to like there are stories of people kneeling for like 3 days and 3 nights in order to like earn their discipleship, or I forget the word, but become a disciple. So things like that, like I loved slipping in all the details from my childhood into this book.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Thank you. And then, so flip the script is also so important for intersectional representation. So I really wanted to thank you for writing a book that literally flips the script, because it was such a like you flipped the trope on its head, and I loved it. The ending was beyond beautiful, but it also leaves open space to critique how queer love is represented today, whether in the US or South Korea or many different parts of the world. So there was a happily ever after, but there's also a note of we can do better. So do you want to talk about why you chose a happily ever after filled with hope as well as some buts?
Yeah. Well, when I first came up with the idea for the script, I knew for sure I want to happen a bit after, because I grew up watching, and even as an adult, I watched so many shows that like love the bury your gays trope, or it's like most recently Killing Eve. If you haven't watched, I'm sorry, but yeah, it ends with one of them dying, and yeah, and I think the 100 also has like killing your gays trope. So I feel like, and it's especially a lot worse for K-dramas, I think, because in K-dramas like in Korean, so unfortunately in Korean society, like there aren't any LGBTQ rights yet, and also like queer people. I mean, pride exists, but like there has to be a strong police force to keep people safe, because there are a lot of people who come to Pride just to protest like queerness. So I really wanted to write a book that kind of like just stands up against all that hatred, and like have a happily ever after where two queer girls can actually have the happy ending. That being said, like I said before, since this is like a contemporary fiction novel, which is realistic, I don't want to make this into like some fairy tale that's not realistic. So I wanted to keep it grounded in the world where it's set, which is like in Seoul, South Korea. So in the book, which is why a lot of time in the story, like Hana and Minji get challenged by the society. So I think it was hard to keep a balance, because I didn't want to make it too dark. Which is why I kind of wanted to put in a lot of like soft, more like happy moments to outweigh all those dark things. So it's kind of tricky to keep the balance, but I hope I did a good job with it.
You absolutely did. I just love how they got their happy ending, and then there's also a kind of we can do better kind of theme. But yeah, this book is going to change lives. So tell us what other stories you're dreaming of and how they continue to center Korean or Korean diaspora protagonists.
Yeah, so I have more Mindy Kim books coming out next year, as well as books for my new middle grade story for middle schoolers. In terms of why, I'm still working on some things that I can't really share yet, but they're about queer Asian characters, so you can look forward to
Oh,
that.
I'm so excited. The Mindy Kim books are so cute. I love them.
Thank you.
Great. So we're going to move into some rapid fire fun questions. But before that, I wanted to remind the audience that we do have time allocate allotted for the Q&A. So if you want to drop your questions in the little box at the bottom of the screen, please do so, and we'll get to those right after this fun round. So first fun question. If you could take a character and flip the script on a date, who would it be and what activities would you plan?
So you sent me this question in advance and I couldn't decide. But I think what I concluded with is that, well, first of all, I'd age them up because I feel like being on a date with a teenager would be weird because I'm
Yeah.
28, but I'd age it up to their 20s, and then I would actually not choose. I kind of cheat a little bit, and then I would go out with all three of the main characters as friends and have a very fun time hitting out the clubs at ATL1, which is where the queer Western clubs are. And I would also just go out and explore the streets of Seoul with them and eat a lot of good food and grab a couple drinks and have a good time.
Oh my God, that sounds so cute.
Yeah, how about you? Which character would you go on a date with?
Bryan, I guess the second or third main character, and I would make him go on roller coasters with me because I love roller coasters and he's terrified.
That's so mean.
I would watch him scream.
People who didn't, sorry, I was loud, but for people who haven't read the book yet, there's a scene where Hana makes Bryan go on a roller coaster. He almost dies, and then apparently Amélie wants that to relive that experience.
I'll be like, "Where's your idol aura now? Not so cool anymore, huh?"
I'm dead.
Okay, let's see. Do you like Korean fried chicken as much as Hana? So if you were to ditch your date for one type of food, what would it be?
So I love Korean fried chicken. It's definitely one of my favorite foods. But I feel like if I was to ditch anyone for, it would be dessert, specifically shaved ice. I think at one point it was actually in my bio that I was always looking for the perfect bowl of shaved ice because it's kind of hard because in Asia, when you live in Korea, it's so easy to find a good bowl of shaved ice, but in America, it's so hard to find a good place that does legit good powdered snow shaved ice with a lot of fruit and sauces and stuff. So if I was on a date and my date was like, "Hey, I'm too full for shaved ice," I'd be like, "See ya, I'm gonna go get dessert for myself."
Bye.
Bye.
Not worth it. Oh my gosh. Okay, next time you're in New York, I have to take you to the best. I don't know if Taiwanese shaved ice is the same as Korean shaved ice, but I'll have to take you to the best ones because they're so yummy here. And then I guess for me, if I were to ditch my date for one food, it would be hot pot, spicy hot pot.
Oh yeah,
the
hot pot's high up there too. Yeah, for me.
So so Goblin and BTS are both mentioned at the end of Flip the Script. I don't know if there are other bands, maybe I just didn't recognize them, but if you had to only watch one K-drama and listen to one K-pop group forever, what would they be?
This is terrible because I feel like for music it's easy because it's BTS, not because they're super famous, but because their range, their discography has so many genres. It's influenced by R&B, hip hop, rock, soft ballads, pop, hyper pop. It's just so complex. I feel like I never get tired of their music. For shows, that's pretty impossible because a question to ask or answer, I guess, because I am one of those people who can't watch same thing more than once. I feel like the only reason I watch stuff more than once is to watch stuff with friends and stuff. If I had to choose a K-drama, I would probably say Goblin, just because again, it's very complex and kind of touches a lot of genres, so I feel like I wouldn't be bored. Yeah. How about you?
Makes sense. So if it's K-pop, then yes, BTS for sure. They have so much range. For show,
be anything, not just Korean dramas, could be anything.
Oh, okay. Um, Probably a Chinese drama called Yanxi Palace. It's about like concubines fighting for to become the empress, and it's one of the best done historical shows, I think. And there's just so much detail in the dialogue and the costumes that I could rewatch. I would probably get really bored of rewatching it, but this is a cruel question.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay, we're gonna move on to the Q&A. So, yay, we have so many fun questions. From Mabel Sue, what inspired you to start the book with the hilarious fried chicken scene?
I'm laughing because May was my editor and she knows. She knows when fire because it's her. So with that scene, it was because we are having a hard time like coming up with like an engaging opening with the script. And this is why you know you have a very good editor. Like good editor, a hallmark of good editors is an editor who like pushes you, not in a mean way, but in like a very like you can do better, like push you to be like a good writer. So Mabel really wanted me to get the opening right. So we kind of struggled with it. But at the end of but ultimately we came up with this beginning because we thought that it would fit Hana's character perfectly. And also I think it made her a more relatable character because I feel like with that scene I want to stress the fact that Hana didn't have that many experiences like with romance. But so she hadn't really experienced what it was like to like fall in love with a person. But I feel like a lot more people can relate with falling in love with food. So I kind of that was the whole like process behind that whole scene about the fried chicken.
It was hilarious. Like that, it immediately hooked me into your book. Let's see. So from from Esther, when you were drafting Flip the Script, what would you say was your aha moment when you felt everything was coming together?
For the script, I think I say in my acknowledgements that this is the hardest book I wrote or something, and it's true because it was an uphill battle for most of it. That being said, I feel like it got a lot easier when I actually went to Korea myself because I feel like before then I was struggling with the whole imposter syndrome of like, am I even like writing this story right? Like, am I like even like allowed to write this story? But actually being in Korea and being grounded in the world really helped me like write the book and finish the book. I mean, I think we'd written the book, I was just revising, but anyway, it helped me finish the book. Yeah.
Oh. From Sarah, does your writing process change when writing YA as opposed to chapter books / middle grade? Is one easier or harder to write for you than the others?
That's a good question. For me, I feel like I am privileged to say that I have experience working with both age groups as an educator. I mean, I don't teach anymore, but I used to I taught for 6 years. And so for me, it's a lot kind of like when I said about like being a method author. Like I try to think about what kids I know in that age group think or talk like. So with like Mindy Kim, I kind of switched gears to like how 8-year-olds would like talk and think. And then for the script, I think about like my high schoolers that I taught and like kind of like what they're interested in and how they talk and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of switching brains, I feel.
Yeah.
From Christy, this one's fun. Hi, Lyla. If you could dream cast your book into a K-drama, who would play your main characters?
That's a very good question. So I actually don't, I think I'm one of the people who don't do this, but I don't actually like head cast my characters. But I would say if I had to choose, I would say that I really like Kim Tami, who was in Our Beloved Summer and 81 Class. So I would definitely cast her as Minji, who's a love interest, because like she has the whole like short hair, cool girl thing down. In terms of like Hana, I think Hana's pretty hardest to cast because I think Hana could be, I mean, I wrote her as like an everyday girl that could be anyone because I want her to be relatable. And Bryan, I would say for Bryan, I was mostly inspired by like a lot of like different K-pop idols. So if one of BTS members are interested, like the role's open for them to join.
Is it BTS?
Yeah.
Oh my god, they will be begging you to join. Which one would it be? I'm trying to think. I feel like Jin could be like, he's so funny
I mean,
and he has
age-wise, Jungkook would be the closest.
true. He's
But
the youngest, right? Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I feel like RM would be too old. Or I mean, RM would not fit the bill for a number of reasons. But yeah.
Wow, a great seg into Claire Mulligan's question. A true ARMY, aka BTS fan, does that chimney behind you mean that Jimin is your bias?
So I loved Jimin, but I think my bias is actually RM, just because I feel like I can relate to him a lot. As someone who it's kind of between cultures, like Korean and American, and also like it's kind of like the leader, and like who kind of like can like speak both English and Korean, and also like just the way the things that he's interested in terms of like movies and like shows and like music. I feel like we could be friends. Like we're also the same age, and so I feel like he's my favorite because I could relate with him
He's
the
so
most.
smart, and
He's just
he
so
writes most
he
of
does
their
the most.
songs, right?
Like I'm also always like I'm always like the mom friend, like the leader. I'm always the mom friend. So I feel like I can relate with being the leader too. Taking that role, the stress and
Love
responsibility.
From Kim CJ, what queer books do you recommend?
Queer books. Well, I'm gonna go with, and there's a lot of good ones that I could recommend, but I will recommend my most recent favorite, which is I Kissed Shara Wheeler. Mostly because I Kissed Shara Wheeler is like my book, but like set in like Alabama, because it's one of those books that's like surprised everyone's queer, and I think it's kind of deals with the same thing where like Flip the Script is like they're all queer but most of them are closeted, and kind of deals with the same dynamic. And then someone who grew up in the South, I could definitely relate with what it's like to be closeted and queer in like a southern space. And I feel like the author did a really good job of representing what that's like, so I highly recommend that book.
It's called, sorry,
I Kissed
Charlie.
Shara Wheeler. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. From Katie, who was successfully mommed by you into this event without screwing up the time zones. Do you ever want to branch into publishing fantasy novels?
I actually started off writing fantasy books. I thought when I was a kid, at least. I feel like my agent and I both decided my voice was more contemporary. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but for now, I think I have more like contemporary fiction. But maybe someday I will write fantasy when the right idea strikes. But so far, I think I have stronger contemporary ideas. Yeah.
Okay, you have to promise to message me first when you think of a fantasy idea. I want to hear. From Ryan Ram, given this is your 10th book, congratulations from the Mindy Kim series to your other YA books. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in navigating the industry?
Oh gosh. I think it's actually 9. It'll be 10 in July when the 8th book comes out. But yeah, it's gonna be 10 by the end of the year. So he's right. I would say my biggest advice is that it's a marathon, non-sprint. Because I think for me especially, like it took me so long to break into the industry because I started writing books and submitting them when I was a teenager. So it was a very long process. I was literally in the industry for like maybe about 20 years. So it's been a wild ride. And things things change so fast, but also not fast enough. So you kind of got it keeps you on your toes. So I feel like you just have to be persistent, but also take care of yourself along the way, because it's a very wild ride and it's also a very long journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, definitely it's a marathon, not a sprint. And just perseverance, persistence, and dedication, hard work really gets you,
Yeah.
I guess, through. From Daisy, a few questions. If you could give me your book to one person, past or present, who would it be? And what are you watching now? And what are you working on next?
That's a hard question. If I could give my book to one person, I would say because she gave me the option of past and present. If the metaverse existed and I could somehow like time travel and meet my former self, I would give it to myself as a teen. Because at the end of the day, I wrote a book that I need as a teen for teens today. And like, yeah, so I would give it to myself because it's a book that I wish I had growing up. In terms of what I'm watching now, I just started watching Our Blues, which is like the mega like cast show with like a bunch of celebrities like Shimina and like a bunch of other famous people that's on Netflix. What I'm working on next, I'm currently actually not working on anything. I'm working on promoting Flip the Script. But I will jump into my new YA book soon. Yeah.
Great. Okay, gonna do last couple of questions. So Esther, also I wanted to say with the book now released, will that influence your TikTok videos in relation to promoting it further? I'm really loving your positivity and the skits around the characters, and I hope you'll still do them, and maybe also more with some of your other books.
Oh, thank you, Esther. TikTok has been a wild ride because I actually started making TikToks for my books because I enjoyed making TikToks about my dog. And then I was like, maybe I should use this energy for like actual stuff for my books. And then like a couple of my TikToks really blew up, which has been surprising and it's been overwhelming and like really like I feel very honored for the support that I've gotten through TikTok. I think I will keep making videos, just not as much because I feel like I've been making like maybe 1 to 3 videos every day and it got really exhausting.
So many.
I literally would wake up, like scroll for trending sounds, save it, make videos by noon, post them around the afternoon. Because I think for me, my peak times are 12 p.m., 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. So I would always try to post in at least one of those time periods. So yeah, I probably won't be as like crazy with that, but yeah, I mean I do want to keep it going because it's Pride Month, and the book just came out, so yeah,
it gets like crazier during promo season. I guess, but 3 videos they take so long to make. I'm shocked and impressed. Of course, you've written 10 books already, so why am I even surprised that you're an overachiever? From Mr. Sean Dilliard. Hi, Sean. Which scene in Flip the Script did you enjoy writing the most and why?
Hi, Sean. Anyway, so I enjoyed writing I think I can't choose one scene. I would say I enjoyed writing all the date scenes with Hana and Minji because for me, I really enjoyed kind of exploring how the relationship developed and also like showing off like the different fun things you can do in Korea. I feel like every date that they went on was very fun, and I had a lot of fun writing them. So yeah.
They were so cute and so fun to read as well. So thank you for writing them. And last question from Isabel. I'm so excited to read Flip the Script and I loved I'll Be the One. Do you have any recommendations for K-dramas to watch or songs to listen to after/while reading Flip the Script?
Oh, so I actually have a whole playlist for Flip the Script that I've been procrastinating on because I've been so busy with like TikTok and stuff. But I will say that in terms of like artists, like Twice is like basically the heartbeat of the book. But also Mamamoo, because I feel like Mamamoo is very like they're very feminist. They got tagged for being feminist by male netizens. But I think both Twice and Mamamoo are definitely the heartbeat of the script in terms of music. In terms of shows, I will say 2521 if you haven't watched it already. That show should be sapphic. Like it's like I mean you probably haven't watched it, Amélie, but it's basically about
I've heard of it. Yeah,
it's about these two girls who are really into fencing and they're rivals, and it literally starts off with the main character having a crush on this other girl, but of course because it's a Korean drama, they both end up with men who are subpar.
disappointing.
But I always like to say like that like 2521, it's like flip the script was set in like the athletic world and not like a K-drama world. So I highly recommend that if you haven't watched that already.
I can totally see Twice. I know like 2 songs by them, but Heart Shaker is like so cute. It's like, come on, be my love, baby.
Yeah.
All right, I will listen to that when rereading Flip the Script. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I think we finished the last Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, everyone. I see a lot of women names in the guest list, and I feel very happy that you guys came.
This was such a great discussion. I'm sorry that we have to cut off here. I can listen to you guys chat about this for so long. Thank you all so much for those great questions, and of course, everyone for being here this evening. And of course, many thanks to Lyla and Amélie for joining us this evening and sharing your beautiful words and insights. And of course, thank you all viewers for joining us and supporting these amazing authors. Don't forget, you can still click on the link in the chat box to grab a copy or 2 of Lyla's fabulous Flip the Scripts, as well as Amélie's epic and impactful Blood Air series. As an independent bookstore, we appreciate your support in supporting these authors. Yay! And then, of course, if you get the book, definitely sign up so you can get the cool swag too. We'll put that link still in there, or check out the website. Also, you can find out about more events on our website for updated listings. You can also follow our children and teen department on social media. Our handle will also be dropped in the chat box, or at Kids in Prose. And you can also watch our past events, just like this one. You could watch it again on our Politics in Prose YouTube page. So thank you all so much. I hope you all keep reading widely and expanding your world and discovering new ones. I hope you speak up, speak out, and you all stay safe. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.